and I didn't record it, and I was super bummed. So let's see. All right, so okay, it's recording. Okay, so you guys ready? Everybody take yes if you're ready. Sorry, you see me, I have crazy hair, hee hee. I don't know how to take it off. I'd like to see you guys, that's kind of cool. My voice is breaking up. Is my voice breaking up to you guys? Let's see, I'll scoot it a little bit more toward me. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. We're gonna launch right into it, okay? So this, I don't care, I'm eager to learn, awesome. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and launch right into it. This is an introduction to astrological birth chart. So this is if you are thinking about having a birth chart, your birth chart read. This is like good stuff you need to know before you have it read. If you don't know anything about them, it's going to help to kind of give you an idea of what they're about and what you can learn from them and all the advantages of having your birth chart read. And so let's launch right into it. Let me click here. Okay, so this is what we're going to cover. I'm going to talk about what a birth chart is, why they matter, why you should even want to see what it is. And then I'm going to show you what one looks like, and I'm going to tell you about all the different parts because there are lots of moving parts to a birth chart. And you're going to see me talk with my hands a lot too. So there's different types of charts too. There's your birth chart, but then there's lots of different things that we can overlay with your birth chart and different kind of charts. So I'm going to tell you what some of those are. And then I'm going to open it up for questions, and you guys can, again, type your questions in the chat box if you don't want to forget, or jot them down on a piece of paper. And then when we're at the end, I'll unmute you guys, and you guys can unmute yourselves, and then you can ask your questions, and I'll try to answer as best I can. And then also, anybody who wants to stay on at that point can stay on, and I'll talk to you about what I do in my readings and how you can get a reading with me, but that's just totally optional if you want to stay on. If not, just hop off at that point. And so I'm going to try to keep it to about an hour, but it'll just depend on the questions, how many questions there are. So, all right, so let's get started. So what exactly is a birth chart? A birth chart it's basically like a snapshot, like a picture of the sky at the moment that you were born. It's all of the placements of the planets and where all the constellations were in the sky, where the sun was, and it's all in relation to the Earth. So we know that our solar system orbits around the sun. We know that. But in relation to your birth chart, we want to know how all those planets are moving around the Earth because we're on the Earth. So it's called geocentric. So it's how they were in relation to where the Earth is. And so one of the schools of thought with astrology is that when the moment you take your first breath, you intake all those planetary energies. And so you're blessed with all those things that they have to give, to put out. We know that there are planetary energies, right? And so they give off and kind of shoot around through the skies, and then the things that are in their way kind of are affected by those planetary energies. So we know that when there are solar flares on the sun, we always hear about it on the news. Oh, there's solar flares right now, so we know that your technology is going to mess up, and so don't worry about that. It's just a solar flare. We know, and the sun is our most strong planetary energy, so we feel that one the most. And then, of course, we know how it affects our Earth. And then we also are affected by our closest planetary being, which is the moon, and we call it a luminary in astrology. But we call everything that's kind of out in the solar system, we call them all planets in astrology, but technically the moon is a luminary. But it's the closest to the Earth, and since it's the closest to the Earth, we feel its effects the most. So we know that it affects our tides. Our tides go in and out based on the moon. We know it affects the female reproductive system and our menstrual cycles. So we know all that stuff. We know what happens when there's a full moon, right? Everybody goes crazy. Hospitals are have an influx of pregnant mothers giving birth, and not everybody goes crazy, but you know, people are a little bit more emotional and a little bit more volatile sometimes during a full moon. So all of the planets give off energies just like that, but in a different way. They have different personalities. Okay, so when you take a look at your birth chart, it can really help you to, number one, my biggest takeaway when I first started getting into my birth chart was I was able to give myself a break, because I was able to understand why certain parts of me were the way that they were, and why I struggled with some of the things that I struggled with, why I had certain blocks. And knowing that stuff made it so much easier for me to move through them and work them out, and to figure out what I really needed in order to make myself happy. And when I did that, you know, it opened me up to fulfill my mission in life, which is what I'm doing right now with you guys. So I think everybody here pretty much knows what I do. But if you don't, you know, or you just need to hear it again, I'm a psychotherapist and I'm a life coach. And part of what I use, one of the main tools that I use in my therapy and in life coaching is astrology birth charts, because they're such a useful tool with my clients in order to understand themselves, just like I had talked about before about moving through those blocks. Okay, so if you are going to have your birth chart read and you've never had one read, you need some information. First of all, you need to know when your birthday is. Most people know that. And you need to know where you were born. Most people know that. But most people don't know what time they were born. Sometimes they'll have heard their mom say, oh, you were born in the morning, or oh, it was the middle of the night and I was so tired. But you don't know exactly down to the minute what time you were born, and that is super important. So, because it's all mathematics and stuff. So, you need to take a look at your birth chart, or at your birth certificate. This is Barack Obama's birth certificate. And you can see on there, it shows his birth. Here it shows his time. So your birth certificate will have something very similar. It probably won't look the same because you weren't born in Hawaii in the 60s, but it'll be on there somewhere. So that's a clue for you to be able to find what time you were born. Okay, so once you have that and you give that to your astrologer, then we can draw up your birth chart. And here is what your birth chart will look like if you've never seen one. Okay, does that look crazy or what? You're like, huh? What am I looking at? At least that's the way I was when I first saw it. But it's okay, because I'm going to tell you what all the different parts are. So somewhere on your layout, you're going to find in the top here, you're going to find your name. In the top on this particular one, you're going to find your name. And you need to verify that your birth information is correct, because if it's off by a day, if it's off by an hour or a minute, your whole chart is going to change. So always verify that it is the correct time. And then somewhere on there, it'll probably say what type of chart it is. Remember, I was talking earlier about how there are different types of charts. So it'll say what type of chart it is somewhere on there. Now, every birth chart software program looks different. So the birth chart that you may be looking at, or that you may get in, when I do them, I give my clients a PDF. And so it may look different depending on the software that's used, but these things should be on here somewhere. They just may look a little different. Okay, so the next part somewhere on there is going to be a legend of the planet placement. So if you look over here, you can see all these little icons. In astrology, we call them glyphs. Okay, and so each planetary being has a glyph matches it. And so I can look at the sun and I can see that it's at 18 degrees Sagittarius, and then here are the minutes and the seconds. Minutes and seconds aren't super important unless advanced stuff. But then I can come over here and I can say, oh, here's Sagittarius, and look, there's the sun, and it's at 18 degrees. So all these little ticks are degrees, and there's 360 degrees around this big dial right here, okay? All right, move over my chat box so I can see. Okay. All right. This box isn't on all software programs, but it was on this one, so that's why I included this one. This box is, it's your planetary energy placement legend, and all of the planets are in signs. You can kind of already see, and I'm going to go over this a little in more detail in just a second. But these are all the constellations, and these are the planets. So the planets are placed in different signs, and the signs all give off different energies: earth, air, fire, water. And they're also cardinal, fixed, and mutable. So just by looking at the placement of the planets around your birth chart, your astrologer can tell quite a few things. For instance, in this chart, there's a lot of signs that are in, the F is fire and the M is mutable. So they are in mutable fire signs, which means that this person, by the way, is Robert Hand, who is a very famous astrologer, written a lot of books. But anyway, this person has, fire is creativity and action and passion, and mutable signs are signs that you can kind of twist and turn with the way things go and make them work for you. If it were over here, these signs are fixed signs, where these signs are really good for getting the job done, for barreling through. And then the cardinal signs here, these cardinal signs are great at starting things and conceptualizing different, it could be projects, could be relationships, it could be in work, it could be projects that you do. So cardinal, great at starting; fixed, great at follow through; mutable, great at going with flow and changing the direction as need be. Fire signs, as I mentioned before, are passionate and action driven. Air signs are more intellectual, idea generators. Earth signs are practical and realistic, and water signs are that mystical, spiritual, emotional type. Okay. So there's those. Then there is this little graph down here, and this is called an aspect legend. So in astrology, a lot, you'll hear the word aspect a lot, and all aspect means is basically mathematical calculations and geometric angles of the way that these planets are placed on this circular dial here. So it's these lines here, and then these symbols help us know what the degrees are. So that's more for interpretation for your astrologer to use. It's a handy little tool we have. So that's what that means. Okay, so the actual birth chart is the wheel. Okay, it's that wheel that I showed you in the very beginning. And so now let's break down the different parts of the wheel. Okay, all right, so I told you before, this is a dial here, and it's got all the constellations and the signs, constellations or signs, zodiac signs in them. So like this is Aries, Gemini, not Gemini, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, and on around. Okay, so that's what this dial is. Then we have all these little glyphs, like I showed you before, stand for all the planets and where the planets were in the sky. Now this center circle here, this is Earth, okay? So this is where the planets are in relation to the Earth. And this, I'm going to talk more about, but this line here is the horizon. So this is above the horizon on the side of the Earth, and this is everything on the other side of the Earth below the horizon on the day that you were born, okay? All right, then we have things that are called house cusps, okay? It's basically, a cusp is an edge, okay? See these little pie shapes right here? All right, and they're numbered 1 through 12 around this. Start here at 9 o'clock and they go all the way around. Okay, each cusp is the beginning of the house, and the houses don't move. The houses correlate to areas of your life. And then when you have your chart interpreted, your astrologer is able to put the house cusps, the constellations, and the planet together in order to get a certain type of energy for you by combining them all together. And then there are these aspect lines, which I mentioned earlier, and they are geometric angles, and they relate to how the planets correspond with one another and kind of talk to one another. Okay. All right. So on the chart, every chart is unique. Even twin charts are different. I have nephews that are twins, and they were born about 3 minutes apart, and their charts are slightly different because the moon moves so fast that a couple minutes could be the difference between the moon being in one sign as opposed to being in another sign. Mercury moves fast. There are certain asteroids, and also your axes that I'm going to show you in just a second here. Those can make all the difference because they're dependent upon the time that you were born as to where they set them. So this is one axis, the dark black lines, and this is another one, and that is all about what time you're born to the minute. So the axis is between someone who was born at 7:51 could be here, and if you were born at 8:15, it could possibly be here. The houses, though, the houses do not move. On every chart, house 1 is here, house 9 is here, or house 10 is here. The only thing is that the width of them might change, and that's just dependent on the time that you were born. So see how this one, the 10th house is really wide, and this one, the first house, is really narrow. Okay, it's just a mathematical calculation, but so the width of them might change, but the placement itself will not change. And we know that the signs and constellations, the planets, change based on where they are traveling in the sky, and then their aspects is how they line up and talk to each other and their angles. So those will change. All right, so let's talk about this axis that I had mentioned before. This is called your ascendant descendant axis. Okay, and this is one. There are 3 kind of strongest elements in your chart, kind of the most important things for you to know. If you don't know anything else, know these 3, right? There's a 4th one that's pretty important too, but there's 3, and one of them is your sun, there's your moon, and your rising sign. Okay, and I'll tell you why in just a second. Okay, this ascendant depends on what time you were born. Okay, and the sign that it is called your rising sign, which is going to possibly be different than your sun sign. So your sun sign is your zodiac sign. I'm a Virgo. Sherry is a Cancer. My ascendant is in Leo, so I'm called a Leo rising. And your rising sign indicates people's first impression of you. Like when you walk into a room, when you walk into a party and other people see you, they kind of get a sense of who you are, right? They'll know that, oh, she's brash and she's out there. Oh, she's really shy, or oh, she looks like a person I really want to get to know, or oh, I don't think I'm really going to be spending much time getting to know that person. You know, that's your rising sign. It's people's first impression. So that's really important to know because for instance, like I said, I'm a Leo rising, but my sun sign's in Virgo. So that Leo makes me like want to be the center of attention, but my Virgo is like shy and reserved. So how do those match up, right? So it helps know that stuff. Okay, the ascendant indicates where the sun was in the sky at the moment you were born. That's why knowing the moment you were born is so important. On the opposite side of that AC, over here we see DC, and that stands for the descendant. And so that's the opposite of your rising sign. That's the opposite of your ascendant. So those are the qualities that you are attracted to in others initially. It's not like romantic attraction. It's just like, oh, hey, I could be friends with her, like that kind of thing. Or that's in its higher vibration. Okay, higher vibration, positive, you know. in its lower vibration, negative, that's somebody I don't really want to spend time being friends with. You know, those are going to indicate those kind of things for you. So that's helpful to know too. You know, why does she rub me the wrong way? Everybody else really likes her. You know, could be because your descendant is, you know, in Scorpio and she's a Scorpio. She has Scorpio qualities. You never know. All right. So this other axis is the one that goes kind of north and south. And it is indicative, okay, it's called the Enum Chali down here and the Midi Chali up here, or the Mid Chali. But we call it the midheaven and we call it the nadir. The midheaven is the highest point that the sun reached in the sky that day that you were born. And this is important to know because this is that fourth one that's kind of, it's important to know because this is your highest kind of aspiration. The highest expression of yourself that people will see you strive for and reach in this lifetime. And then down here, opposite it, is the nadir. And the nadir that's the innermost expression of you. So it's the direct opposite of your outward persona, right? Your highest expression of yourself. It can be your lowest expression of yourself. It can, and you know, depending on the ways that certain planets talk to each other, it can indicate a propensity for depression or anxiety. It can indicate times in your life that have been emotionally difficult for you to go through. And it's also that part of you that makes you kind of retreat inside yourself. So those are helpful to know. Okay. So this part can get a little confusing. So if it does, bear with me. I will clear it up at the end when we get into the questions and answers, but I'm going to try to do my best to explain it. Okay. So you know how I was saying that every chart starts over here at 9 o'clock and goes around counterclockwise, right? Okay. Every house is the same. And every constellation or sign and every planet kind of has a house that it lives in. And by lives, I mean that is the quality that it possesses, okay? But just because it lives there doesn't mean it's going to be there on your chart, okay? Just because I'm going to talk about the third house, but just because Mercury, we say rules the third house and Gemini rules the third house, doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be there on your chart. Maybe Mercury, when you were born, maybe Mercury was in Aquarius. So it's going to be in a totally different house, but that gives it the flavor that makes you, you. That's the nitty gritty stuff. Okay. So I'm going to use the example of the third house. Third house stands for communication. Mercury is about communication and Gemini is about communication. Okay, so they all line up. However, your planet, in this case Mercury, indicates what type of energy it is. So in this case, it's what it is you're saying, okay? And your sign indicates how the energy manifests itself. So in this case, it's Gemini. Gemini is how you're going to be saying the things that you say. So Mercury is logical. So you're going to be, if your Mercury's in your third house, you like to speak in logical terms. You like statistics. You like reasons to back up stuff. You're not just going to accept things, you know, as is. Let me rephrase that. You're not just going to say things and expect other people to just accept them as is. Okay, you've got all the facts to back up what you believe. If you've got Gemini exerting its energy, it's going to influence how you say it. And so Gemini is very communicative. So Geminis are talkers, okay? So they like to talk about stuff. And if you have something in the third house, that indicates what area of your life you're going to be exerting that energy. Okay, so in this case, it's third house of communication. And I'm going to get to what each house means, what each planet means, and what each sign means next. Okay? All right. So I didn't really go into too much about the signs because I didn't want to take too much time talking about them, because we kind of know a lot about the signs, are the sun signs, the constellations already. But again, the constellations or the zodiac signs, let me say this, the zodiacal year starts at Aries. Most people think, well, logically it should start at Capricorn because Capricorn's in January, but it actually starts at the spring equinox. So the spring equinox is in the sign of Aries, and that's when Aries begins. So Aries is the trailblazer, the pioneer, wants to do everything first. Taurus is stability and beauty and strength. Gemini is the talkative, communicative one. Cancer is the nurturer. Leo's the showman, center of attention. Virgo's the perfectionist, analytical, can be shy. Libra is about balance and harmony. Scorpio is intense and deep, secretive, mystical. Sagittarius is fun and long range and philosophical and big picture ideas. Capricorn is the leader, very kind of cut and dry, wants to be the best. Aquarius is out of the box and kind of radical types of thinking, altruistic. Pisces is mystical like Scorpio, but different because Pisces is more of like a dreamer or an idealist. So those are just some little keywords about the different constellations. But again, when you're having a reading, we go into it much more. Okay, so these are the houses. And you can kind of read through these as I'm talking, but I really like this little image because it explained a lot. But the first house over here, this is about our sense of identification. It's how we identify, how we look, things like that. Second house is about what we value. So it's money, property. It's also our sense of self-worth. Third house, again, we've already talked about third house, but it's about communication, but it's also about siblings and short range travel. Fourth house is about your foundation, your roots, your security. It's indicative of your younger years and also your older years and often to retirement. Fifth house is about creation. It's what you create. It's your fun. It's your sense of expression. It can also be hobbies and things that you enjoy. Kids, adventurous type sex. Sixth house is about facilitation. It's what you do in service to yourself and your body and to others, and as far as work goes. It's things that you do out of duty, not things you do because you enjoy. It's things you do out of duty. And so it can also include animals here and health and body and, you know, that kind of stuff. Seventh house is about unification. It's about one-on-one partnerships, usually indicative of marriage, but also business partnerships, and also the lower vibration of it, which is open type of enemies, like, yeah, she's my frenemy type thing. Eighth house is probably my favorite house, and it's the hardest to understand. It's the house of transformation. It's death, but also rebirth. So whenever something closes or ends, it never just ends. It always opens something else. So it's that wheel of life that goes round and round. Okay. But it's also about justice and legalities and kind of that house of adulting, like taxes and inheritance. But it's also the house of the occult, the mystical type of spirituality. Ninth house is the house of cultivation. It's higher learning, higher spiritual exploration, also exploration of different cultures and long distance travel. 10th house is the house of your aspirations, your career, your status, your fame. 11th house is the house of affiliation. It's your groups and your friends and the altruistic types of ideals that you have. 12th house is the house of the hidden. It's the subconscious, can be the house of your undoing. Also, it's it's about the things that you hide from other people, can be sacrificial types of things that you do for others. So yeah, so those are a little bit about the different houses and the areas of life that the planets can be in. Okay. All right, so these are just some keywords about what the planets, the energy that the planets give off. So the sun, as I mentioned before, the sun that's your kind of your identity, your personality, your outer self. It's how you deal with the outside world. Okay, rising sign is how the outside world sees us. Sun sign, how we deal with the outside world. The moon is one of the most important things to know. Your moon is your inner self. That's the conversation you have with yourself. That's your emotions. It's your instincts. It's your, it's the things that you say to yourself that nobody else kind of knows. Those that are closest to you will see your moon. But it's that inner life that you have. And it's the instincts. It's also your reactions too. Because most of the time our reactions are emotion based. So yeah, moon, fascinating. Okay, Mercury, as I mentioned before, Mercury is about logic. Mercury is like asexual, like just the facts, man. Okay, I did a video about the planets as Game of Thrones characters, and if you watch Game of Thrones, Mercury is Varys. So very flitty, likes to talk a lot. Mercury in mythology is the messenger of the gods, so he always goes around and talks to everybody. Very communicative. Okay, but doesn't get like personally involved, just facts. Venus is our beauty and our love. It's our receptive, that receptive part of ourselves that takes in value, where we value things, and beauty, love, softer kind of sides of things. Mars is the opposite. Mars is the penetrating force that we have. It's about action and passion, and it's kind of like that, the doer. Mars is the doer. Mars is also instinctual as well, but it's the action we take based on our instinct. Jupiter is Jupiter's really cool. It's a lot of things. Jupiter is ultimately it's about justice, but it's expansion of anything that's already there. It's going to expand it even more. It can be in its higher vibration. It can be about luck, and it can expand all the good parts of your life, right? But it can also, if you're in a lower vibration, it can expand all that stuff and take it a lot deeper than, you know, had Jupiter not been, I don't know, maybe opposite your moon. Saturn is the opposite of Jupiter. Saturn is the male type force. It is about structure and restriction. Saturn holds you back and reins you in. When our Mars says, go, 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 I want this now, 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 Saturn says, hold on, wait, you're not ready. You need to do the work first. Then you can get to where you need to go. So Saturn gives us the structure that we don't always want, but we always need, okay? Uranus is really cool because Uranus is our little freaky planet. It's the revolutionary kind of energy, the out-of-the-box thinking. It can be sudden, abrupt change. It's bigger picture, you know, things outside of yourself. Neptune is the supernatural planet. Neptune is about, is there a written translation in case you forget? Yes. Okay. Let's see. Neptune is about, it's kind of like, the easiest way I can explain Neptune is like you're driving through a fog. Okay. So some things are unclear. And you have to kind of turn on your fog lamps and find your way through, right? It's also sometimes about surrendering and dissolution dissolving something in order to make way for Pluto, which is transformation and death and rebirth. But Pluto is about power too. So it's not just about death and rebirth. It can give you a lot of power, which is nice because it's such a little planet, but it's a big whopper of a planet in the energy that it gives off. Okay, so as I had mentioned before, there are other planetary bodies or points, mathematical points in your chart, but we all call them planets just in astrology, just to make it easier. So I listed a couple here. These are ones that you will commonly see. Okay, we have Chiron, which is an asteroid. Chiron is our wounded healer. It's that part where we received a wounding, and when we heal others, we are able to then heal ourselves. Okay. If you know the mythology, he was a centaur who was wounded in battle, and so he couldn't be a soldier anymore. So he went and trained the soldiers, and through training them, he was able to heal himself because he felt important again. So that's that part. That's where you have that that talent to kind of heal a part of yourself through helping others. Your part of fortune, also called the pars fortunae. The part of fortune is a mathematical point. So remember I talked about your rising sign, your sun sign, and your moon sign. So it's a mathematical point where that combines those three and gives you the point where you can find, where you can kind of balance all those out and find that point which for you is personal happiness. If you have, say, your sun is in Aries and your moon is in Pisces, Aries is very, remember, go, 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 penetrating force. Pisces is hold back, slow down, observe everything, see what we want to do, right? So those can be very opposite each other, and trying to blend those in together, it can throw you out of whack. And so that's what the part of fortune can show you, is that part that you need, that point in your chart where you need to concentrate your energies. Okay, North Node and South Node go together. They are always directly across from each other because they are points where the moon and the sun cross paths. And the North Node is about your destiny. Regardless, one of the things about astrology that I find really fascinating is that it makes room for all different kind of religious leanings. The North Node, and that can come into play when you're talking about the nodes. The North Node is what you're aspiring to in this life on a soul-based level, okay? And the South Node is what you are trying to resolve in this lifetime on a soul-based level. And if you believe in follow the whole idea of reincarnation, but if you don't, that's okay, because the South Node can also denote things that you have done in this lifetime that you are trying to kind of work out and make up, not make up for, but you know, do right by, I guess, as a way of putting it. Yeah. Okay. So, so those are the points and bodies that you will commonly see. There's also, there's several different dwarf planets and other asteroids that you can get into when you have a more advanced reading, when you've had your basic birth chart done, and then you can get into more of the detailed stuff and look at the dwarf planets like Ceres and Eris and stuff. But those are enough to kind of get you going. Okay, so remember I talked about the aspects earlier, right? Okay, so this is an easy way to kind of explain this. So this chart, pretend all these planets are sitting around King Arthur's round table. Okay, so that's what the chart is. It's King Arthur's round table, and all the planets are sitting around it. Okay, so see these two planets right here. This is Uranus and Saturn, and they're sitting right next to each other. So that's what we call a conjunction, because they're right next to each other. So what they do is, because they're right next to each other, they talk all the time, and they whisper to each other, and they get the same, you know, kind of ideas, and they make agreements really easily. Can be for the positive or the negative, but they cooperate pretty well together. And so it's kind of like a, you have a 7 and 7, right? You have 7-Up and you have Seagram 7, okay? On its own, 7-Up, really good. On its own, Seagram 7 is really good, but it, you know, maybe it's sometimes tough to take just on its own. Combine them together though, and it's a very easy drink to drink. And it takes on a different connotation. It's like the it's like the best of the both of them kind of come together. So that's what a conjunction is, and those are important to know how they blend together, because that's going to be, you know, in the area of your life where they're going to play out. Okay, when they are in opposition, they are directly across from each other. Okay, so I got to move my chat box here so that I can see. Okay, so you see how Saturn and Uranus are directly across, separated by this red line, directly across from the Sun and Mercury and Venus here. So that means, if you imagine that they're sitting at the table, Saturn's got to yell across the table in order to be heard, but the Sun doesn't always hear because the Sun's so bright, it's like in its own way. And so it doesn't always hear what Saturn has to say. So the Sun only hears half of it and then goes off of the half that the Sun heard and shouts something back to Saturn. And Saturn's like, that's not what I said. And then Saturn exerts its force. And so it can sometimes be a tug of war. It can sometimes be hard to balance, but that it's not a horrible thing. It's just, that's a point of energy where you need to place some concentration to work that out. And that can show an area that you might possibly struggle with balancing those energies out. So that kind of stuff is really helpful to know. A trine is 4 signs of planets that are 4 signs away, or 120 degrees, because each sign is 30 degrees. And trines, if you can imagine, they're sitting at a round table. They can see each other pretty well. They don't have to look around each other. They can see each other pretty well. They're not too far away, so they can cooperate pretty well. Squares are, they're closer, they're 3 signs away. They're closer than trines, but they're at such an angle that you have to turn your head almost exactly sideways, so it's hard. You don't like to be in that position, you know, for a long time. So that energy, that combination of the two of them, the 2 planets that are involved in a square, can sometimes be hard to stabilize, but it can also be a driving force for you. So that can also be a great point of an impetus to move you forward in your, you know, soul's journey, so to speak. So there are some other smaller aspects, weaker aspects that will play out too, but these are the 4 main ones, 4 strongest ones. All right. Okay. So, pretty cool, right? Everybody say type yes, that's pretty cool. So, is that it? No, that's not it. Let's see. There's lots of things that can be shown in your chart. If you take a look at your chart, not only do you get all of the things that you were born with, you know, all those talents and strengths and areas for opportunity, but you can also find out what your romance style is, who you're attracted to, maybe for the good, maybe who you're attracted to that is not necessarily for your highest benefit, which is really helpful to know if you're single. But it can also, if you're not single, if you're in a couple, it can help you to know how you like to be loved, because sometimes we're not conscious of that, and that can kind of come through in relationships as conflict. So it's helpful to know that. One of my favorite charts to read is the Psychic Indicators chart, because we all have some degree of psychic ability. Some it's easier to manifest than others. Some it takes on different forms than others. And a lot of times what we think are just naturally how we are, that's actually a psychic gift that we just don't realize, because that's the way we've always been. We think everybody's that way, but that's not the case. And it can also show you where you can kind of manifest and use it in your life for your betterment, because you were given these things for a reason. And it wasn't to do bad with, it was to do, you know, to help yourself on this journey and to help others in the world. Also, it can we can find career indicators, things that would make you happy, things that would serve your purpose on earth. You might be slaving away at a job that you hate, can't figure out exactly why, because you might be good at it, but it might not agree with what your soul is saying to you. So we can look and see what your chart says about your career. Now, another thing about looking at your chart is we take your birth chart and then we put the planets kind of on the outside of it, or on top of it, so to speak, as to where they are now. So you have what you were imprinted with at birth, and then you take where the planets are right now, and then you can see how those energies play off of each other. And sometimes a planet that's in transit will directly aspect, remember we just talked about the aspects, will directly aspect one of your natal planets in your birth chart, and it'll trigger it somehow. And so this could mean that you come into a period of deep introspection. It could mean that the energies are there for you to finally move. But the thing to know about birth charts when you're looking at them are, it's about energies. It is not determinate, okay? Just because the energies are there and they're saying one thing, it's up to you what you do with it. So just because it might say, this is a common one that I run into, your chart is different every day of the year. Your birth chart will always stay the same, but the way the planets are in the sky will change. But we'll get to that more. I'm getting ahead of myself with the questions. I said I wasn't going to get to those, and I just see them pop up. Okay. What was I saying? Okay. One of the things that I see commonly is I will see Pluto aspecting something in the 7th house, which is a house of relationships. And so people think, oh my God, does that mean I'm going to get divorced? You know, say Pluto moving through the sky is directly opposing a planet that's in your 7th house. I'm going to get divorced. Oh my God. No, that's not necessarily what that means. It could mean that a phase of your marriage or your relationship is changing. It's dying away, and you are going to open up a new phase of your relationship. So it could be, let's say that Pluto is opposite Neptune in your 7th house. So Neptune is in your natal chart, in your birth chart. Neptune is there in your 7th house. Okay. So that means, you know, things aren't always clear. You don't always know where you stand in relationships. Okay. Let's say you're married, and the way that the planets are moving in the sky right now, Pluto is opposite that Neptune. And so you're like, great, I'm going to find something out and we're going to he's having an affair and we're going to get divorced. Not necessarily. It could mean that he finally has or she has a conversation with you, and it changes the way you look at each other, and you're able to move forward in a different new understanding, and your marriage is basically different after that point. So it doesn't always have to be dramatic. Sometimes it is, but it doesn't always have to be. Sometimes it's just a small little shift, okay? Mercury in retrograde this year was not so great for me. I got into 2 car accidents within a month, but you know what? They were just little fender benders, and neither of them were my fault. Nobody was hurt. It was just a slight inconvenience, okay? It doesn't always have to be the sky is falling. Okay? And it doesn't always mean you're going to win a lottery either. On the other side of it. But it's kind of fun to look at. Okay. So that's basically how charts work. What are some other types of charts? What can we take your birth chart and tweak it to show? Well, we can look at progressions. As you age, this kind of goes to your question, Sherry, a little bit. As we age, our chart basically moves through time, Okay, so just like the planets move, our chart is going to move. It's going to evolve as we evolve because we move through life on our soul's journey, right? So your chart, we have a mathematical way that we calculate and we move your chart forward in time. So easiest way to say that is it's kind of like you almost move your sun for, oops, sorry, let me go back. You almost move your sun forward 1 degree for each year of your life. That's the easiest way to explain it. It's a little more complicated than that, but that's the easiest way for today's purposes. So for instance, my sun is normally, this is my progress chart that I printed out today. My sun is normally in my natal chart, it's at 2 degrees of Virgo up here. So when I turned 28, my sun actually moved into Libra. Does that mean I'm a Libra now? What? No, it doesn't mean I'm a Libra now. This is what it means. If I'm always a Virgo, my sun is always going to be in Virgo. Okay. However, when my sun moved into Libra, it took on some Libra qualities. Okay. So my analytical side was when I turned 28, coincidentally, it's the same year I had my daughter, and I changed a lot that year. Thought that it had to do with my daughter, but now I see it was on a bigger, grander scale. So now I'm still analytical, but I'm able to weigh both sides of an issue, right? And kind of head toward the harmonic. Instead of my always having to be perfect and everything be perfect, I'm able to go, you know what? This serves this purpose, and this part serves this purpose, and this is what is going to bring more harmony than having this be perfect, and it can't be done until this is perfect, right? Now when I am 58, my chart is going to move so that my sun enters Scorpio. So that is going to be interesting. So I'm going to have an interesting life after my son enters Scorpio, after I turn 58. So I will still be a Virgo, but that intense side, that analytical side, or that strive for perfection, or the discerning side of me, may take on more intense nature. It may be more spiritually intense. Who knows how it'll flesh out. But not only does your sun move, but all of the planets move. Okay, and so learning where all of the planets are now as opposed to where they were then, that can give you a lot of insight into how you've grown, because we are not the same at 23 that we are at 43, right? We change and we grow through life. So this can add another dimension to understanding yourself. All right. Okay. My favorite thing to do is lunar returns, because we can do them monthly. So remember I had mentioned that there are 360 little ticks, all these little tick marks. There are 360 of them all the way around. Okay. And I'm sorry, I have to move. You guys can't see my chat box, but my chat box is like right in the way. So when the moon is in transit, when it is moving around right now through time, right? We just had the super moon, right? It moves around this dial every month. So every 28 and a half days, it moves around this dial. And so at some point, it's going to come back to this spot, 2 degrees of Scorpio, which is where my natal moon is. And when it does, I do a lunar return, which takes a look at how the planets are going to be aligned over the next month. And then I can see where the energies are going to play out for me based on my birth chart over the next 28 and a half days. And I actually get really into this, and I take these little guys and I draw lines from here. And I draw lines out here, and I can put the dates in here, and I go through and I make notes. What happened to me on the days, the way I can track it. It's super cool. I do it every month. It's great. So yeah, so you can know, hey, on let's see, This is my lunar return chart. This is my birth chart with transits, actually. But I can, let's say it was a lunar return chart. I can say, oh, you know what? Saturn or Jupiter is Mercury on the 28th of this month. So that might be a really good day for me to have a good conversation with someone. And then, you know what? Come to find out, 4 days later, I look back and I go, wow, you know what? My husband and I stayed up till like 3 o'clock in the morning talking. That was amazing, and it's really cool the way it plays out. I love that stuff. So the same thing, gotta click back, sorry guys. So the same thing that happens with a lunar return, we can do with a solar return. So the sun returns right here, and the sun returns to the same spot once a year on my birthday, okay? So on my birthday, I can do a solar return chart, which shows how the planets are gonna play out over the next year. So I can, again, kind of see some energies that might be coming up for me, some things that I might be, on the lookout for, which can be extremely helpful. Like one of the things could be, let's say you have Mercury in your 4th house, in your solar return, and you have Jupiter in your 10th house. Well, that could mean that you're going to be relocating for a job, and that might be nothing that's on your horizon. But then 6 months down the road, lo and behold, you get a job offer for someplace, and you're like, hey, I'm moving. So, we can tell all kinds of things, but it's up to you whether or not you move. Just again, doesn't determine what you do, just shows the energies that are kind of coming your way. All right, another fun one to do is a SYNASTRY or composite chart. This is a partner chart that I use to show 2 different people's charts, and I kind of take them and overlay them and look at how the energies combine with each other, how they play off of each other. And I use this in romance, and this is a good like wedding or engagement gift. But you can also do this like for business partnerships. If you are wondering, say you got that job offer, you're wondering, would this person and I work well together? You can overlay your charts together, and you can see how that relationship will play out. You can see the strengths and the weaknesses to that relationship, and you can kind of see how they would blend together. So this is great to do with partners. It's a good engagement gift. It's good for partners who have been together for a while too, because sometimes they can make space for each other in their relationship by knowing, okay, that's her nature and this is my nature and we're totally different. And that doesn't mean that she needs to be just like me, and it doesn't mean that I need to be just like her. We can make space to work together in our relationship, that kind of thing. I would need to use both birth time. Agwina. There it goes. Oh, no, it's question time. Yes, when we do partner charts, we do need to know both birth times. Now, there is a process that we can do. Well, I say we, but it's a software program. You can do it manually, but it takes forever. But there is a program where we can find the most probable time of birth based on answering some questions and things like that. And we can kind of see the probable time. And then there's, we can also always just do it. I put them at noon if we don't know, because then we're plus or minus 12 hours either way. So that can be one way if we don't know the birth time. I'm trying to manage. Okay, there we go. If we don't know the birth time, we can do some workarounds. So, okay, I unmuted you guys. So I'm going to scroll through this chat box. And I'm going to see any questions. Does anybody have any questions they want to just shout out? You might have your own mute on. So if you do, just unmute your own as you ask your question and then just put it back on when you're done. That way we don't have any background noise.
Kelly,
Yes.
when you were talking about the square, was that a line square in the chart that you were referencing, or was that totally not what that meant?
Actually close. It's okay. It's a side. It's one side of a square. Okay, so it's 90. It's a 90-degree angle that the planets are 90 degrees away from each other. So it's one side of a square, so they call it a square in astrology. Does that answer your question?
Well, if it's 90 degrees, it's 90 degrees with a right angle, right?
Right.
So it would go, it would hit 3 points on the chart, correct?
No, it's just the one line. It's just one line from point A to point B. It's so It's just one side of the square. They just call it a square. It's easy to get confused because we have sometimes those aspects can make shapes in your chart. And there's a grand trine, there's a mystic square, there's a T-cross, and those are just different aspect shapes. So you can have a full square in your chart with the aspects, but that one line is called a square.
Okay, thank you.
Even though it's just one side. Is that good?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
The queen if those people need their time of birth.
Okay. Is there a written transcript of your birth chart in case you forget? If you get one with me, I record them for you. I mean, you don't have to. You can get it recorded. It's a little bit more because I have to process it and send it to you. But you can get the video recording of it. I don't do written reports for the transcripts for this reason. You can get a computer generated one, but all it's looking at is, you got to figure it's an algorithm. So if the algorithm says, because it's a computer writing it, the algorithm says Neptune in a square to, or Neptune in opposition to Pluto means this. But the thing is, it doesn't take into consideration everything that's in the chart. So it may mean, Neptune opposite Pluto may mean, yada, yada, yada. But when you take into consideration the placement, the house placement of it, or we were talking about an aspect shape that it might be in, it can take on a whole nother flavor. So that they're very cut and dry, and they don't give personality and flavor and personalness, uniqueness to your chart. So that's why I don't use the written reports. They're helpful, as a starting point, but they do not give a big picture. But you can get a video recording when I do your birth chart. Agrina says, and sex. 5th house, adventurous sex. 8th house, intense, romantic, spiritually connected sex. Let's see.
I have another question.
Yes, go ahead.
The when you were saying that people move, they're born in Cancer, but now they're 58 years old. Their son is now in another place.
Uh-huh.
How do you figure that out?
It's a mathematical calculation. We take a look at your chart and we move it forward based on, there's an ephemeris. Do you know what an ephemeris is?
Yes, I do.
Okay. For those of you that don't know, it's a list of where the planets are in the sky every single day for like the last 7,000 years. So, so it takes a look at that and it moves everything forward in your chart based on where things are in the ephemeris and some different calculations. And so you take on different characteristics instead of just the ones that you were born with. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. And so is your chart different every day of the year? Your natal chart, your birth chart does not ever change. That is always the same. But the way the planets are in the sky at the time will affect your natal or birth planets. So in theory, technically, no. In theory, yeah, because it's all about how the current planet position plays off of what's on your birth chart. So that's why you need a complete picture. You need to look at transits, also at progressions, in order to get a complete picture. Let's see. Gotta go, but I can reach you later. Oh, okay, yeah. Let's Paula, do you have any questions? No. Oh, that's a Guina. So is everybody good? How often should you do your chart? You can do your chart once a month to do the lunar return chart, and once a year to do the solar return chart. And then you can you can pull your chart, your birth chart, you know, the one time, because that's never going to change. But it depends on what you want to look at, because every time you do a reading, you can look at something totally different. Did I get into that? No, I didn't get into the charts, but I did a little bit. So you can look at, I didn't get, that's all next. So do you want me to, let's see. Okay. I'll go into the birth charts that I do right now and show you kind of the different chart readings and stuff that you can have, okay? All right. So that might help answer your question. So let's look at having your chart done. Okay. So how to get your chart read. This is how you get it read. You contact me and I'll give you my contact slide in a minute. First, we do a birth chart reading of your general birth chart. Then we can do a bajillion different secondary readings from there. We can look at your progressions, at those lunar and solar returns. We can look at history charts. Then if you want to take it even further than that, I have a coaching program that I base around your chart. Let's look at the basic birth chart reading, 60 minutes. I walk you through everything that I just showed you, where each of the planets are in each of the houses and the important aspects, the way that they talk to each other, some general impressions that I get from your chart, and that kind of personal side of it. And then you can get it recorded if you want to. And that takes about 60 minutes to do. Sometimes I go over because, you know, I like to chat, but generally it's about an hour. We do it the same way, just like this, with video conference. So it's easy peasy, or I can come to you. It just depends. I also have started doing I haven't actually done one yet, but I've started doing, I've started the idea of doing parties where you get a bunch of people together and I go over their sun, moon, and rising signs, those three most important parts, and I explain to them a little bit, and it's fun, and drink wine, and or soda, whatever, and we have a good time. So if you have a lot of people that want to do that, we can, that's kind of a good little intro into it. And then before you book your first session. After we do the birth chart has to come before any other chart because I have to get to know you and know all the idiosyncrasies and stuff. Then after that, we can do a psychic indicators reading, a career indicators, romance. We can do solar returns, lunar returns, synastry readings. We can go through your progressions. If you're relocating, I can draw you up a chart for that, see what energies kind of will come to you based on where you are on the globe. I can do readings for things that are called mundane readings. Like if you want to start a business or a venture, I can draw up a chart for that. I recently started with a company. I joined their company and I kind of did a little bit of research on the best day for the company to launch. And the company has its own birth chart, and so we were able to kind of time the launching of the business, and so that was kind of cool. So those are called mundane charts. And I can do synastry charts. I can do with 2 of you or just 1 of you, as long as we have the times, or can kind of rectify them. And then if you want to take it even further, if you have like a lot of people have certain blocks that they just cannot get past, like everybody thinks I'm fabulous, but I have this self-worth issue and I'm just stuck here. How do I get past it? So I tailor-make a targeted for your issue coaching program. It's 4 sessions, usually takes place over a month. First session is doing that initial birth chart reading. Second session, we look at your points of destiny, kind of your purpose, your life purpose here on earth, where you can find your personal happiness, because a lot of people don't know that. And then the next 2 sessions, we can either spend on one of your issues, or we can spend 2 sessions, 1 session each on 2 different issues. And so that's the coaching program. So there's lots of different ways that we can take it. And the way you can, and when you come to a reading, make sure you come with pen and paper to take notes, or even if you're getting a recording, you still want to take notes. Come with an open, inquisitive mind. I love to answer questions and impart all the knowledge I can. You can contact me by going to my webpage. This is a picture of it here. It's kellywintermft.com/metaphysical coaching, or you can just go to kellywintermft.com and click on coaching, and that'll take you right to the page where I have all of the different astrology readings and things like that you can take a look at. So that's about it. Are there any other questions before I go ahead and end the meeting?
I think you did an awesome job.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate you guys being here and spending this time with me. And if you think of anything that you want to ask me afterwards, because that usually happens, just email me at kellywintermft@gmail.com. kellywintermft, like marriage and family therapist, @gmail.com. And and just reach out to me, and I will be happy to answer any of your questions, or you can post something in the event, on the event page on Facebook too. You can always hit me up on Facebook too. I'm going to put this video up on YouTube, so if you guys want to go back and watch it, you can. Also, I'll put it on the event page too. On YouTube, I'm Kelly Winter MFT. Thank you, Paula. I'm glad you were here. And I think that's Carla down there. I'm glad you were here too. And I will see you guys all later. Thanks so much for joining me. Appreciate it. Bye.